Love on Campus acknowledges that we meet on the traditional lands of the Kaurna people of the Adelaide Plains. We recognise and respect their cultural heritage and beliefs and relationship with this land. We acknowledge that these lands are of continuing importance to the Kaurna people living today, and we extend that respect to other Aboriginal language groups and other First Nations people.
Hello everyone and welcome to the Love on Campus Footnotes. Today we have a very special guest with us. Oh, well, actually, sorry.
You're skipping over me already.
I'm skipping it. We're going to keep it all in. You guys get to hear our mistakes. I'm Georgia Nichols, and of course I'm here with Dr. Amy Matthews.
Hi.
Kathleen is not with us today, unfortunately. She's still on maternity leave with baby August. But we have a very special guest, as I did say. We're joined by best-selling author Tate James, which is super exciting. She's a USA Today best-selling author of fantasy, paranormal romance, urban fantasy, romantic suspense, and has over 25 million views on TikTok for Tate James and Madison Kate. So she's an absolute force on social media. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Of course. We're so excited to have our first author interview. It's so exciting.
Yeah, we can't wait to talk about it. We love the book, by the way. We both just read it recently. So we're really happy to dive into it.
Yeah. It was my first reverse harem. I've never read one before. Which is crazy because I talk about them a lot and I know all about them, but I've never actually.
Well, it's great that we have one because we want to ask you lots of questions about it.
Yeah.
Okay. Yep.
So I suppose our first question for you, your most recent release in Australia being published, sort of reintroduced to the market is Hate. So do you want to sort of pitch it to our readers? Do you want to tell us a bit about it?
Oh gosh, this is always so hard because I'm like, don't spoil anything. Okay, so Hate is book one of the Madison Kate story, which is a 4-book series. It follows the journey, so to speak, of Madison Kate. She's a bit of a wild child. She's the daughter of a very influential kind of businessman. She finds herself in the wrong place, wrong time, sort of questionable situation where she ends up being framed for a whole bunch of things that she had no part in. She gets exiled for a while, and when she returns home a year later, she finds the 3 rather handsome perpetrators living in her house. Add to it a bit of stalker action, a bit of mystery, and a lot of bad attitude.
I loved the way it opened. Yeah. It was such a great opening.
Yeah.
You certainly get the hint of the romance to come on with the tension.
Being Australians yourself, you would hopefully have sort of pictured Luna Park.
Yeah.
For that. Yeah.
Yeah. So would you call this a sort of urban fantasy setting?
No. Urban fantasy has to have some level of magic and.
Okay. Yes. Because it has this sort of heightened, I don't know, unreal vibe to it. Do you know what I mean? Like it's
the colours turned up a little bit.
Yeah, the colours turned up.
Yeah. My the Bloom publishers describe it as Suicide Squad.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah, that would totally nail it.
That really does. That does nail the vibe. Absolutely. Oh, that's so interesting. No, because I'm not sort of familiar with I'm relatively familiar with fantasy stuff and then romantasy, but sort of when it comes to urban fantasy, I suppose this is as close as I've ever delved, although it's not urban fantasy, but yeah.
No, I would put this more into your romantic suspense kind of category.
Yeah. So interesting.
So where did you get the can you give us a bit of a backstory on the book and how you wrote it and where you got the idea from? And I know that's an awful question to ask an author, But just like a little origin story for the book.
Yeah. Well, it started out because I had seen some book covers that were just listed by a designer as pre-made book covers, and the original cover was never ever got used. But I bought a whole series, like the whole it was trilogy back then, from this designer, and it was a girl just sitting against a wall with like long hot pink hair, and that was kind of like the start of building her character in my head. And then I needed to write a piece for a Halloween-inspired story, just for an online event, and I wrote the first 2 chapters just for that.
Yeah,
and
right. So exactly the same as they are in the book?
Yes, exactly as they are in the book. And I posted that into this, it was a Facebook group for a Halloween event, and then I was like, actually, I really like that story. I'm going to keep going with it. So I didn't actually release the first book until probably, I want to say at least 6 months to 8 months after that.
Right.
Yeah, because I had to finish some other projects first, but then I circled back and fleshed it out, and yeah.
So how long would it take you to write a book like Hate?
Typically, because I write full time, it takes me about 2 months.
Yep. Wow. Okay. So I think because what you can feel when you read the book is it's a really coherent world, like really cohesive world. So that makes sense to me that like you immerse in it and you stay there for 2 months. Because I felt that as I read it.
Yes. Yeah, it becomes a very real world, and the characters become very real people inside your brain.
Yeah.
And they react as real people would, which is not always the way you want them to, and sometimes it can be very frustrating. Yeah. Sometimes you can be like, why would you do that? But then if you actually put yourselves in their shoes, you'd go, well, fuck, would I do anything different?
Yeah.
What I find really interesting is that you mentioned that this probably has ties to like self-publishing novels, that you bought the covers to the books first and you, from that, you sort of worked backwards, I suppose. Like you saw the covers and then you came up with the idea. I don't know how often that happens to you when you do self-publish a novel, but that's really interesting to me, the process of self-publishing and how all of these other aspects contribute to then the story that you make.
Yeah. Well, I think it's quite common for indie published authors to do it, that they see a pre-made cover and they go, oh gosh, I've got a story for that. Or that it sparks a story. But the same thing can happen in everyday life. You can see somebody at your local cafe and be like, yes, that's a character in a story, and build an imaginary life for them.
Yeah. So because we're a podcast focused on kind of romance fiction, I'm really curious to sort of unpack some of the tropes. And because it is a 4-book series, obviously this isn't like the kind of book where it all wraps up in one book. We're kind of there is quite a cliffhanger at the end of this, readers, be warned.
Yeah.
But I'm sort of curious about your thoughts on romance in kind of reverse harem genres and what kind of flavour romance has in this context.
In terms of reverse harem?
Yeah, like just for anyone who might not be familiar with it, how you say it might interact with romance as a concept or as a genre.
Well, I think in the literary sense, reverse harem kind of allows you to have your cake and eat it too. And I mean, I suppose it does in the real life as well. But I think for readers and for authors alike, it allows you to play with so many different character types, but also so many different relationship types, and then get to explore like how do those different characters and different relationships mesh together. Yeah. So it's sort of it's layering like multiple versions of the same story into one story. Yeah. Which I think it broadens the sort of the reader demographic significantly once people, take a chance on it and get past the stigma around reverse harem. I think that it has a really diverse readership because there's something for everyone.
Yeah. So when you talk about the stigma, because we talk about the stigmas against kind of romance and women's fiction all the time, what kind of stigmas do you feel reverse harem faces?
A lot of the media that we see around reverse harem is a huge misconception that it is just smut and that it's just written porn, essentially.
Yeah.
You know, it's all erotica, or, you know, it's all gratuitous sex and no plot line, no character development. You know, it's fluff, it's filler, it's trash.
Yeah.
And that's, I find, even when people are a fan of the genre and you know, a fan of reading romance and they're very enthusiastic about it, I feel like those are the kind of terms that are sort of casually thrown around but quietly detrimental to the genre.
Absolutely.
You know, that people can talk quite glowingly about the trash that they read on the weekend.
Yeah.
But why are we calling it trash?
Yeah.
Oh, two big agreeers here.
Yeah. We're obsessed with this topic. In fact, we spend a lot of our time talking about it, about how we, because even within a genre, you get the hierarchies repeating themselves, right? So even within
Absolutely.
romance, you get these kinds of weird dynamics of things having more value than other things, or things being more respectable than other things. And you mentioned kind of sex and smart. If you actually compare Hate to, we've been reading Hannah Grace at the moment as well.
The Icebreaker.
There's like way more explicit sex in that, with its kind of young adult cover, than there is in a lot of reverse harem books. So it's really interesting how some genres get slapped with the smart label and others don't.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And sort of like
it's crazy, and it's, I don't know. I'm hopeful that it is a slowly changing world at the moment, and I've seen it a lot just in the last couple of years, that the attitude towards reading romance has shifted significantly, and that has to come down to the social media generation and the younger generation of readers that are voicing their opinions on social media and not really giving a fuck what anyone thinks of what they're reading, as opposed to, I guess, my generation and older, that it wasn't intellectual reading.
Yeah, exactly.
You know?
Yeah.
So,
supposedly not. I mean, it's like because I think I've learnt so much from romance novels. Definitely. When you think about where we get our ideas on love and intimacy and sex and all these sorts of things,
conflict, your own journey as a human being,
and how these things all interrelate. Romance has taught me so much in that sense. So it's so strange to think that these novels don't help us grow and learn as individuals. It's so interesting. But what you were mentioning, the sort of younger generation, we were talking about TikTok, Book Talk. You have a very responsive fan base online, likely because you do have those sort of self-publishing origins, and how a lot of your own involvement in marketing probably has sparked that. What do you sort of see on social media? How do you engage with it? How has that been for you as an author?
I actually find social media very difficult.
Yeah.
I've dabbled into all of the different social media platforms and tried to sort of find the ones that I'm most comfortable interacting on, and I regret to say it is only Facebook. I really, really tried on the TikTok.
I think your TikTok's great.
I've had to take a massive step back from that one, because I got the sort of, I went through a phase, and I guess it was during COVID, where I was trying to be a TikTok, you know, and I just kept missing the mark on it. And then, you know, I find that the people that comment on TikTok are brutal. They are like 10 times harsher than the other platforms, and I just couldn't take it. It was really affecting my creativity. I would I'd get to my desk, and all I could think about was the horrible things that people had been saying, and I was just like, I went through a period where I didn't write for a number of months, because I was just like, you know, what am I doing? I can't do this. Like, nobody likes what I'm doing, you know, like that self-doubt got really intense. So now I've sort of gone, all right, let's just keep those platforms about just about the books, keep them a little bit less personal, and let my readers really have their own voice. On those ones.
Because I think that is what they say about TikTok, that it is sort of like a reader-driven platform as opposed to a platform where authors sort of talk about themselves. They say it's where the readers come through and they talk about their favourite novels and they talk about what they like, and that's sort of what drives a lot of book talk, and that's what I,
Well, it is interesting what you said.
And I do find that having readers talk about their favourite books unprompted and unpaid and all the rest of it is so much more authentic, and
absolutely.
those recommendations carry so much more weight than just, me coming on and being like, hey, you should read this book, it's great.
Well, when I looked up your name, Tate James, and then also Madison Kate, like at the top immediately these sort of reader-made videos, and those sorts of things feel really authentic. Word of mouth feels so much more, I don't know, like it is just like getting a recommendation from a friend of some sort. So I suppose that is where the strength of TikTok lies, and it doesn't sort of lie in this own sort of taking it on as an author. As you said, it sort of had really detrimental effects to you.
Yeah, it's interesting because I was just chatting to my agent the other day about social media and managing it, and, all the things you have to do except for write. And she's always saying to me, but the one thing you have to do is write. Like everything else is secondary to that. And so, I think it might be useful for people to hear. Like, so you obviously stepped back. How do you refill the well or set up your life so that you can write? Because I think that's a struggle for a lot of people.
Look, margaritas help.
Pro tip there.
That's the best advice. No, look, once I sort of realised what my problem was, I had to take a very conscious step away from it. And it is a really hard addiction, I guess, to break, constantly checking your social media.
Yeah.
And once you can kind of cut the habit, replace it with other things like, reading other books, or, I've got 2 young children. I, invest more time in doing activities with them and, taking trips away in the weekends and things like that, just to really fill my time with things that had nothing to do with my work, nothing to do with writing, and everything to do with, my own personal sense of sort of self and worth.
Yeah.
And then once I could kind of, get that bit of perspective that random people on the internet do not define who I am, then, it just kind of flowed naturally from there.
Yeah, beautiful.
So interesting. I'm really interested in this sort of move that you've made from self-publishing your own novels to now this Hate series, which is coming out, the Madison Kate series, coming out traditionally published. I mean, what was sort of that move for you? Why have you made it? What sort of actioned it?
Well, with that, it was very much a question of reach, Traditional publishing still has, and has always had, a much, much stronger sort of foothold in the publishing world. And as much as I love seeing the rise of, online ebook readers and Kindle Unlimited readers, the sort of predominant space for books is still paperbacks and bricks and mortar stores. And that's a market that I just couldn't quite crack into as a self-published author. Some authors have managed, and like hats off to them. But it certainly for me, and being based in Australia as well, it was something that it was a roadblock that I was hitting. And so I thought, how can I get my stories and my words and my books into the hands of more people? Because the people who have found it and read it and loved it are incredible, but how can I reach the people who don't know about it yet?
Yeah.
And that, to me, traditional publishing was the most sensible, logical, and, just the best option for that.
Yeah, wow, that's super. That makes absolute sense. I mean, we've got physical copies of your books with us.
With the bright pink hair on the cover.
Yeah,
pink
which
and
is
green cover.
beautiful. I mean, is this the first time you've seen your book sort of printed in physical copy when this is being traditionally published, or have you had other books sort of tried in other senses to get them in that paperback form?
No, I've always had all my books in paperback form, but they were generally print on demand, so they just weren't carried in your mainstream stores.
Yeah.
So you could always get paperback, but you'd have to order from the likes of Amazon or so on and so forth, and they just deliver them directly. It's just not the same as having it in stores. You know, I went out recently into like Rouse Hill, which is my closest shopping centre, and they had it at Kmart and at Big W and at Dimmock. Is something that
the feeling would just be like, it would just be unimaginable. I see Amy's books in stores and I freak out.
It is pretty amazing to walk in and see your book, or when someone sends you a photo of it, like in Big W or something. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, definitely, and that was kind of what I was missing.
Yeah. Can I ask a frivolous question now? Well, it's not so frivolous. I've been really curious since reading the book. I know that you're not supposed to have favourites, and I know we don't want her to choose one of the guys, but do you have a personal favourite of the three? Archer, Cody and Steele?
No, officially.
I started out with a favourite, but as the series went on, they all had their moments where I wanted to smother them with a pillow, and, you know, down for all three of them. So no, come the end of the series, they're all on equal footing for various reasons.
Because I love their relationship with each other as well. Like there's some really good interactions between the three of them. Yeah,
and I found that diehard Madison Kate readers fall very strongly into either Team Archer or Team Steele. And the Cody girls just let it play out.
Really? Oh, I liked Cody.
Yeah. I suppose it's kind of like having all your favourite book boyfriends, but in one series.
Yeah.
Just like heaven. Like I've read, you know, A Court of Thorns and Roses by Sarah J. Maas, and it would just be like Feyre having Rhysand, Azriel, and Cassian all at the same time. So it's like, it's just all of the, you know, it's the beauty of them all.
Yeah, that's right.
Like they not having to choose, you know, and having that.
Well, I think you'd upset everyone if she chose one of them.
Yeah. So I think we'll sort of end with a question that we're hoping to ask all of our sort of authors that we get to interview in future, and you're our first. We just want to ask if you have a favourite romance novel, if you can pick, and what it is and why.
I'm not much of a repeat reader, so I don't actually have any hard and fast favourite.
Yeah.
I've got the authors who introduced me to romance that will always have, you know, that very special place, just the likes of Diana Gabaldon. Back when I was reading whatever my mum was reading. And then as I was stepping into the sort of indie romance world, I was reading a lot of Jame and Eve, who I've in more recent years been very lucky enough to co-write with.
Wow.
She writes some incredible, and she's very diverse between her young adults up to, we co-write together, so it's fine. And then just all sorts of, I find a lot of great romance stories in non-traditional romance books, you know, like your urban fantasy Kim Harrison books, you know. Yeah. They're not marketed as romance, but there's some fantastic romance storylines within there.
Yeah, absolutely. So it does tend, I understand the sort of author intrigue because I love certain authors as well, and you sort of follow them through as like I'm also not much of a repeat reader. I don't really have the time to repeat read. So it's like following that author and still getting that same feeling and that, I totally understand that. Love it.
Thank you so much for joining us. We're so glad you were our first author.
Yeah, it was so exciting. It was so interesting to talk to you. And
thank you for having me.
Of course.
Yeah, good luck with the Australian release. We'll be
Yes.
following to see the next books come out too.
Because the next one comes out
Excellent.
So this one comes out February 19th.
That one was
Last month.
February 6th.
This month. Yep, February. It says February 19 on our
February
sheet.
19th.
Was it February
I think
5th?
is what-
It was February 6th, and I think number 2 comes out on the 20th.
The 20th. Oh, so next week. Well, when you listen to this,
Yeah.
guys, it'll be out. So you have
It'll
to
be
get
out.
both.
Yeah.
So the second one's called Liar.
And there's 4 books in the series. So
So
endless.
you've got a lot of fun ahead.
Yeah, exactly. Endless reading to go. Thank you
Excellent.
so much, Tate.
Thanks, guys.
Okay. We'll see you. Bye.
Bye.
We're really thrilled that we had Tate James on today. We had so much fun with that conversation. And just thank you so much, Tate, for joining us in this conversation.
Her most recent release, Hate, is out in Australia now. It is the first in the Madison Kate series. And if you want a bit of gritty, reverse harem, sort of
3 hot guys
Yeah.
and 1 really tough girl. It's really good fun.
urban romance, that's what you should go for. Thanks, guys.
Bye.